DVD.
Yeah.
A killer movie comes to DVD Tuesday.
You can't cheat death.
Some will live. Some will die.
You're next!
You decide. For the first time ever, an interactive feature gives you the power to choose new deaths and change characters' fates.
I never thought I could see my own death before it happened.
How it ends
I'm not dying.
is up to you. Final Destination 3. Only 2-disc Thrill Ride Edition, July 25th.
Fuck you, Ben Franklin. SpongeBob lives underwater. I just had a vision that you are lined up to ride the Scared to Death 2-disc thrill ride finale of the Thrilogy. We're talking Final Destination 3, a la mode, special features on the side. Rent, buy, stream. Don't you miss the carnival gimmicks of selling a movie back in the day? 2006 is back in the day. We're old. And we've got 2 ways to watch the movie. And that don't mean DVD or BD. Yeah, we're gonna take a look at a time when you didn't just buy a movie, you bought an at-home experience. VHS tapes sometimes had extras on them, believe it or not, but the marvel of them was just watching the movie at home. Laserdisc had the first director's commentary, which critics asked if anyone would want such a thing, and DVDs.
This is
Duvde.
Is it D?
Yep.
V?
Oh, DVD.
This baby can fit so many extras on it. I like Final Destination. I love Final Destination 3. But I think back on my childhood, and I ask myself if I love this entry to the franchise the most, because I grew up with so much more than just the movie itself. Why, you ask? With behind the scenes features, you get endeared to the cast, the crew, the work they put in to get this to your screen. But audiences are there to watch the final product. It is about the destination, not the journey. Growing up, I loved these peeks behind the wizard's curtain. I loved seeing the trick behind the magic. I aspired to be a part of that world when I saw the performances off camera were just as much fun. Though the curtain reveal for Dorothy wasn't intended to endear her to the wizard. And so thinking critically, just because the people making these movies had fun, that doesn't always translate onto the audience. Terry Morgan in 2006 called the Thrill Ride Edition a rare example of a package where the making of documentary is more interesting than the movie itself. So do I have nostalgia for a movie because of content not in the movie? And could, or should, we pull that curtain back to where it was and forget the wizard was ever there? Hell, maybe I'm finally making this video to ponder on a nostalgia I hold for an age of marketing. One that's been largely abandoned by the mainstream, held up by cultural historians of prestige distribution services. Got a little deep there, but I'm reading a script and the tangents we will go on. Starting with context on how we got to a third Final Destination, because longer video essays are in, and I enjoy research, so skip ahead if you want, but there's some interesting stuff coming up right now. This is part of the video I am hastily shunting in right at the start. I cannot bury this last minute lead. That wizard's curtain has been ripped clean off the rings. I posed some questions just then, frankly, into the ether for curiosity's sake. It was simply set up. But time and time again, I kept seeing the same name credited to all these special features, Julie Ng. Every question asked, every compliment given in this video was written in earnest before I sent her an email. And lo and behold, she answered very generously. And so those compliments are deserved. Her fantastic response will be at the end of this video. Thank you, Julie, for number 1, making these special features, number 2, making this video possible, and number 3, making this video worthwhile.
Now in the 90s,
Jeffrey Reddick first read a story about a woman who was on vacation. Her mom called her and said, "Don't take the flight tomorrow, I have a really bad feeling about it." That woman switched flights, and the plane she was supposed to take crashed. Reddick writes a spec script for The X-Files. Mulder and Scully investigate the mysterious deaths happening to the survivors of a recent disaster. Fox turned it down. The studio, not the guy, though I'm sure Mulder loved this story. Then New Line Cinema made it a movie. How did they get it? Reddick writes a 10-page treatment for a Nightmare on Elm Street prequel. When he was 14, New Line sent it back unread. Reddick contacts New Line founder Bob Shea and insists he read it. At the time of pitching to the X-Files, Reddick had been interning at New Line for 11 years. So that Freddy idea never did get made. But Bob liked this guy enough to check his new idea out. 16 students and 5 staff at Montoursville High School were on the Trans World Airlines Flight 800, a Boeing 747-100. 12 minutes after takeoff from JFK on a scheduled international passenger flight to Rome, with a stopover in Paris, it exploded and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean near East Marks, New York. All 230 people on board died. July 17th, 1996, the third deadliest aviation accident in US history. In Final Destination, Alex boards Valie Airlines Flight 180, a Boeing 747, on a senior trip to JFK to Paris. But he receives a terrifying flash forward of the plane crashing minutes after takeoff. So this movie is based on true events. And you're thinking, how come nobody ever brings this up? Well, Roger Ebert did in his review. This scenario is of course in the worst possible taste in view of the real-life flight of TWA Flight 800, also bound for Paris with students aboard. I will observe that and not belabor it. New Line gave this original script to James Wong and Glenn Morgan, 2 dudes that did some of the most memorable episodes of The X-Files.
Mulder, she already is home.
Starbuck.
They'd stick together for movies like Willard, Final Destination 3, and Black Christmas. Wait, how was that also 2006? Final Destination made nearly 5 times its money back. Didn't do great with critics. Even by the crude standards of teenage horror, Final Destination is dramatically flat. Your own Final Destination just might be the box office, to demand your money back. Starts by cheating death and ends by cheating us. Will no doubt be a hit and inspire the obligatory sequels. Like the original Scream, this movie is too good to be the end of the road. Final Destination 2. Story by Reddick, directed by David R. Ellis, and written by another duo, John Gruber and Eric Bress. 2 lads who do a similar fantastical concept involving the fate of dumb teenagers, the butterfly effect. Starring the greatest highway pile-up in cinema history. Also a bunch of people who all feel a bit more mature and, boring, as criticisms of the first movie clearly had an effect on this one. It's not a dead teenager movie, they're young adults. And a 15-year-old. Doubling down on its own cleverness, this sequel challenges audiences with a complex domino effect of altering fate, tying in with the first movie, and trying to explain how a newborn baby cancels out death. But then it doesn't, so drowning basically does the same thing? I still don't know if it all checks out, but it does end with an exploding barbecue. Better received than the first movie? Some critics just don't like horror. Perhaps movies are like history and repeat themselves, first as tragedy, then as farce. Mandates complete gullibility and vacuous attention in order to work on any level. This risible thriller is merely a sadistic series of misread premonitions and vile murders. That there is an audience for a movie in which innocent people suffer hideous accidental deaths is troubling enough, but a group of creative people chose to direct their energies on this repulsive spectacle, which simply provokes disgust. Not as cheekily knowing as the Scream movies, or as trashily Grand Guignol as the Evil Dead franchise. But like those pictures, it recognises the close relationship between fright and laughter, and dispenses both with a free, unpretentious hand. I think that last dress down brings us swiftly onto the main event.
Remember when Dick Cheney shot that one guy in the face?
Wong and Morgan are back, baby! For cheating death, Final Destination 3. Wait, no, that's not right, it's Final Destination 3D, or if you're in Japan, Final Dead Coaster. Was this movie made by William Castle? How many gimmicks does one movie need? This time, McKinley seniors narrowly avoid a terrifying roller coaster derailment, thanks to another flash forward. We know the pattern by now. Teenagers cheat death, then they die. Or do they? The reason you all probably clicked on this video was to revisit a very special DVD special feature. The interactive power for you to choose their fate. The spooky fortune teller promises you'll be saving innocent strangers from their final destination. We're flicking right through every page in our choose your own adventure and looking at every possible fate. Spoilers, death is a sore loser.
But fate is an impatient mistress, dear friend, and if a decision is not made quickly, she will choose for you.
That voice is Kristen Cloak, wife of Glenn Morgan and the teacher from Final Destination. Yes, this is an interactive movie, which means Wong and Morgan not only produced the theatrical movie you saw in cinemas, your home release or even streaming right now, but they also filmed alternative takes, additional shots, and entirely new scenes that change how the story plays out. To give context for what does or doesn't happen, and why you might even care to intervene, I will guide you through the story, not just to give full weight to our decisions, but I also have trivia and jokes. Like the first two movies, several characters are named in reference to horror filmmakers. Wendy and Julie Christensen are named after Benjamin Christensen, Aaron Ulmer, Edgar G. Ulmer, Louis Romero is a mix of Herschel Gordon Lewis and George A. Romero, Jason Wise, Robert Wise, Carrie Dwyer, Carl Theodore Dwyer, Ashley Frund, cinematographer director Carl Frund, and Ashlyn Halperin, Victor Halperin. But our famous harbingers of doom don't just stop there. Welcome to the Dead Zone. Someone brings up Abe Lincoln, and presidential assassinations are littered throughout. The town and high school of McKinley, the names of the subway stations Booth and Oswald, the map in the subway shows Ruby Drive, 63rd and Hiddell stations. Our heroine is the mid-noughties Scream Queen from Black Christmas, Death Proof, Monster Island, and Sky High. Everyone starts somewhere, and more often than not it's horror, and actresses have often shown their obvious talents in these roles. Mary was rightly lauded for conveying a lot of character with her emotional reactions. But then the script doesn't trust audiences.
You know, I'm such a control freak, like, I couldn't handle that.
They say the real fear with these rides comes from the feeling of having no control.
We can't have audiences thinking too much, like they did during the last film.
Yeah, maybe for you, but our lives are actually going somewhere.
No! What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, man.
Everyone imagines weird stuff when they get scared, but it never turns out to be what they imagine. Never.
Mid-noughties horror sequels is truly when the elevated horror movement began.
That'll sell some yearbooks.
Upskirts and Whale Tales. Case in point. God bless Kevin. He's a low-key himbo, and the movie is deliberately playing with the stereotypes so that he isn't the obvious leading man. Who can't relate to a dude in high school who just wants to hang out with Mary Elizabeth Winstead? Again, there are some wrinkles added that they both have significant others and only tangentially know each other at first. You can't stay mad at him anyway when he can do this.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Crystal Lowe, Mary Elizabeth, and Kristen Cloak all star together in Black Christmas. Shalane didn't, but she's in John Tucker Must Die and Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. If we're meant to be reading into every little thing, then I guess this is the Ash's future? A lot of hostility in this sibling spat. Who's proudly knocking to mom at their age? I'd be knocking to the fashion police for that big ass cabbie hat. What's the news, boy? Check the obits. If that photo was a clue, it looks like a guy parachuting is gonna Mario stomp your dumbass head. Yeah, that's his name. And he delivers a perfect one-note performance. Not only dancing after hitting the high striker bell 3 times, but then this.
What you doing? Get the fuck back.
He asked for the high five. What an asshole.
When else are you ever gonna see a dick that big?
I'm looking at one right now.
He's only second to assholes because we've got Frankie Cheeks. An incredible oddity that wouldn't feel out of place in a scary movie.
Are you even here? Yeah, you graduated like 2 years ago.
I stuck around to monitor your development.
He's a cynical know-it-all, like Dennis Miller with black fingernails. She's like Parker Posey with raccoon mascara. That is a movie I want to see. Can you imagine Parker in a Final Destination? Of course, that quote is talking about the resident goth couple. A Canadian actress, singer, Disney star, and one of my many childhood crushes. Oh, how things change. I don't think I was alone because her Wikipedia page is scarily detailed. Here's the dude's wiki. Hey, he was in Existence and Ginger Snaps. That's pretty cool. We can't forget Tony Todd is back. Not as William Bloodsworth, but the voice of Devil's Flight.
You can run, but you cannot hide.
Maybe a mortician does VO work on the side? This ride is already ominous enough. I get having a gigantic, anatomically correct Satan draws the crowds.
The balls!
But do you need that window showing off the rickety supports? I would be having a flash forward right there and then. The question is, can we save them? Our first choice! Are we calling heads or tails? Already our involvement in their fate is a little unclear. Are we calling on behalf of Jason, or are we the coin? Whichever we choose will be Jason's pick, and he always wins. Convenient so that they can reuse the same footage of Kevin losing and having to sit at the back with Wendy. An act that irrevocably ties their fates together. Pick one now, and watch closely to see if you've saved them. All aboard, safely strapped in, and ignore the leaky hydraulics. We're good to go. For a popular ride, they leave a lot of empty seats. Roller coasters have mechanical failsafes that keep the restraints down even if hydraulic pressure is lost. Roller coaster seat restraints do not work with hydraulic fluid. They work with pressurized air to enable fast release in case of an emergency. The moment the brace is shut, the computer checks for irregularities in the locking system prior to clearance. Like the plane and the highway, this is the scariest roller coaster you have ever been on. It feels like the runway in Furious 7. Dozens upon dozens of spins and flips. No coaster is this long. But a great mix of real performances on actual coaster rides, all mixed in with decent CGI to bridge together all the separate pieces and shots. That, incredibly, gets everyone killed. Our first deaths and almost half the cast are gone in one go. The Ashes, Frankie, Wendy's BF Jason, and Kevin's GF Carrie. It kind of negates the purpose of being able to predict these deaths when it's impossible to know what order the first several are. Weirdly, when you rewatch it, most people get a real normal death. Lewis goes flying out, and for the goal of trying to hold on, Death has to go out of his way. The other big thing to look out for in a rewatch is the mysterious two strangers who die right after Erin and Ian, which later proves a challenge for their survival. When they're all hanging upside down, Wendy's yelling, literally right past the people in between them. When we all learn who they are, it is practically impossible that they never noticed who was sitting right in front of them. Anyway, Kevin gets comically cut in half and Wendy flies for her own eye. Has anyone seen Final Destination 3? I haven't. But I saw the preview and I looked up the scene on YouTube. You all know what scene I'm talking about. I am ready to round up a party and murder every producer, writer, and director of this movie. Maybe I'm overdoing this a little, but it's pissing me off! I am ready to write a 2-page essay on why it is stupid, unrealistic, terrible, unnecessary, and everything you can think of. Being a roller coaster fanatic, it is ticking me off to no end. Not only am I a coaster fanatic, but I persuade others to go out and ride and have more fun in their lives by going on roller coasters. Then this movie came out. Basically, my whole life's work that we've trashed in one epically stupid scene! If you read my post, I did and should have taken it a little harder. There are so many people that I have convinced to ride them, and they have ridden a few. Then I get a few coming back to me. What the hell, Keegan? You said they were safe. Look at Final Destination 3. That's exactly what will happen to me on my next roller coaster. I hate the producers. Period. So, what did you call? In both cases, Wendy has a hysterical breakdown, but where she has it turns out to be a big deal. For the canon heads version, Wendy is about to put away her camera on board next to Kevin when she gets the flash forward, and a fight breaks out with the great retort,
Fuck what? I mean, fuck you!
as he accidentally backhands Erin and gets them all kicked out. Also, the strange command,
Nobody else gets off this ride!
trapping Jason and Carrie on the ride, which seemed a little wrong. If you want to get off, a teenage worker can't keep you restrained. But the ride goes on and crashes, with our principal cast surviving. But if you pick tails, no, but Wendy has a vision right there and then and grabs the coin in mid-air. Wendy, Kevin, Jason and Carrie are the only ones to leave before ever getting on the ride. Somehow, this does not start the Final Destination domino effect. Wendy simply saves her friends. How? It can be argued that 4 other people take their place. But that's not how this works. It was their time to die, not just anyone. You were in the flash forward. If Devon Sauer had his vision while still shitting in the airport, would death have been fine? And what about Final Destination 2, where they had never actually merged onto the highway? So is the rest of this new story just a sad drama of them dealing with the trauma of losing their classmates? No, they didn't film an entirely new movie. What we do get is a strange Animal House wrap-up. Carrie dumps Kevin and becomes a groupie for Doctors Without Borders. Jason goes on a religious bender and founds a Scientology cult. Kevin gets a terrible end, as he's labelled a stalker after Wendy and then goes to Iraq, which shockingly does not help his mental health. Not sure why he has to stay away from the Christensen house. She's not there. She's out across the country helping police with her psychic readings, now going as Ming, Tuesdays at 8 on NBC.
All new must-see TV.
Tuesday, Wings.
News Radio.
Razor.
NBC Premiere Week starts in 2 weeks.
We're given a second chance if we're really committed to sticking with that strange conclusion. And you can continue with the credits, or cut back to the way things should be. Wendy cries for a bit over a boyfriend, panning right past the other students we don't care about. We see her take an umbrella out of a locker, which disappears in the next shot. It's not dumped in the trash like her books, but clearly they made a creative decision for her to walk in the rain. Dramatic much? Also, did you throw away your belt? Some nice drama between Wendy and Kevin. Teenagers being dramatic about the rest of their lives. High school is everything, and once that's over, it's just the rest of life. And everything is so much more. So having to deal with all of that as well as a tragic disaster, Mary Elizabeth does a decent job at showing a complex muddy depression. Kevin's a neat little guy, coping via dependency by clinging on to Wendy.
Just do me a favor, keep an eye on her because she's kind of freaked out.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I made a promise to Jade that I would take care of you.
On the ride.
It's a little weird, they were barely friends, but he feels bonded now in a way she doesn't. And I quite like that. It's purposeful. It's the emotional equivalent of looking into things too much for signs and meaning. Kevin proves himself useful because he's the one bringing up the last 2 movies. He gets a little too detailed at recapping the Wikipedia, and Wendy takes off.
And I found out about this high school French class from New York. 6 years ago, they went on a trip to Paris. When they were boarding, a kid had a vision that the plane was going to explode. Just like you did.
Fuck you, Kevin.
He freaked out, and 7 people got off the plane. Just like us.
Fuck you, Kevin.
And on takeoff, Flight 180 blew up. And over the next several months,
Fuck you, Kevin.
everyone who got off that plane started dying in weird accidents.
Fuck you, Kevin.
They died in the order they would have if they had stayed on the plane. Unless someone intervened, and it skipped them.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Look, Wendy! Hey!
Fuck you, Kevin.
And this is where Wendy starts to recognise Final Destination's new gimmick. Ooh, Ramone's clues! Poison in the heart? Needles and pins? Teenage lobotomy? Maybe the KKK takes their baby away. It's her photos, the first one that confuses me. She looks at the coaster going down onto Jason's head. That is how he died, but this suggests, even with the flash forward, Jason was always going to die on it. If the photos were taken before the flash forward, then Jason's death was premeditated regardless.
So now I've gone cross-eyed.
I like the Ash girls. They're dumb stereotypes, but they've been nice to everyone. They try to be considerate in a funny way. The rest of this cast are very hesitant in listening to Wendy. These 2 might have gone along with it. Just how likely are 2 tanning beds in the same room? People are either naked or in a bikini. Do people always have to go in pairs? The Rube Goldberg stuff is starting, and most of this sequence is their fault. Yuri locks himself out, but they put up the BRB sign, they bring in the drinks, they dislodge the CD shelf, they even turn up the heating. This is not a freak accident. Ashley and Ashlyn have no way to turn the bed off, but in real life all tanning beds have a start and stop button right in the bed. Tanning salons are not allowed to hang anything above the tanning bed. But on to making more bad decisions, our next choice. Should Ashlyn set the temp to 73 or 76? Either way, we're on a roller coaster of love.
Define irony.
Let's go easy and pick 73. The temp keeps rising, up to 76 and beyond, until the tanning beds explode and cook them both, trapped inside with the CD shelf pinning the doors down. They were panicking for their lives, but we didn't even need that safety goof before. Surely just pushing the shelf out of their handle would work. There could have even been a Saw-like moment, where the two are both pushing, trying to save themselves, and dooming the other. This is already similar to the last choice, in which the accident still happened regardless. And we hit 76 anyway. In the original scene, they both start to notice it getting hot, but it's too late for their escape. In this instance, Ashlyn realizes that setting it that high was a mistake, and makes her own new choice to get out and change it, just as the shelf comes flying off the wall. It does a trick shot off her dome, and into the bed handle still somehow. Ashley freaks as things start exploding, but Ashlyn then wakes up. She removes the board, grabs her friend's hand, and they get electrocuted to death, which ruins the fantastic match cut.
Osama, let's go. Still kicking. He's out of line, but he's right.
Great dialogue all round. Frankie has a moment of reflection on pushing women to look their best. Texas Battle owns every chance to flex his acting chops.
Fucking boring. Hey, if you ever have to come to my funeral, then bring me a PSP or something.
Dramatic Wendy at it again. She phones Kevin to walk over to Jason's grave. She's more worried about the happening.
The wind isn't in on this.
This is not random wind.
It's the fucking plants.
And now she's the conspiracy truther.
Fucking wavy trees!
No, not that.
That's the last photograph Lincoln posed for. Look, see the shadow?
She never forgot how it actually went. She was there fighting vampires too. Info Wendy is also wrong. Booth shot Lincoln from behind, below the left ear, with a small Derringer pistol. There was no exit wound. While still a goof, it is possible that this is a deliberate error injected into the film, as a common misconception.
I guess you came to me with this because I'm responsible for putting this in your head. With the Flight 180 thing. And it did happen, and it may be occurring here, but you can't believe every weird thing out there because you're desperate for an answer.
Weird that this was Kevin's thing first, but now that Wendy does it, he doesn't believe her.
When was the last time you ate?
Oh wait, he believes it a second later.
Okay, those kids on Flight 180 died in accidents in the order they would have died if they'd have stayed on the plane.
Now they're getting burgers.
SpongeBob lives underwater.
You can actually pinpoint the second when his heart rips in half.
It's so sad that you know that.
And now.
How is that sad? Did people in 2006 not know that? A good simple setup right here, even though they should be safe from what we know of the rules. Wendy can make a choice! When the guy in front gives them the middle finger, should Wendy honk again? Let's be polite and pick no. With no other way out, and at this point thinking that anyone could die, including them, they narrowly avoid death. But were they the target? Kevin's engine flies out and takes a little too much off the top for that guy in front, and since Frankie Cheeks is bald, that really is too much. When the speeding car rams Kevin's car into Frankie's car due to the laws of physics, Frankie's car should have gone forward, but instead it stays in the same position. Okay, let's honk again now knowing. We actually get their attention, and see it's Frankie. When they smash the windscreen, Kevin pulls Frankie out of danger, and we actually save someone. Yes, we actually chose their fate. They actually do a really good job of the change of scene. Kevin and Wendy are still in the ambulance, but the dialogue is slightly different, and we can see the wreckage with no body. Both choices end with Wendy randomly calling Kevin a dumbass.
I'm not the total fucking idiot you think I am.
Fuck you, Kevin.
We barely get time to rest as Wendy and Kevin confirm their suspicions over the photo clues.
There's nothing like up my ass or anything, right?
Fuck you, Kevin.
We got our next choice. Should Wendy take another look at the photos? I don't really get how you can confirm the photos of foretelling your deaths and then not give it another look before visiting Lewis. And you get to Lewis in a car. Kevin drives and Wendy checks the photos. In a rush, apparently, so let's skip it.
You on crack.
Lewis doesn't believe them. Duh, but then no one does, not at first. It's a nice return to the first, where Alex is treated suspiciously because the deaths do keep happening around him. Lewis makes some great points. He's just living his life, an argument both Wendy and Kevin have made. They don't go as hard.
Fuck yeah!
And the manufacturers of any gym equipment would be sued to high heaven for designing weights that swing down together like the ice blocks in Saw 4. We did save Frankie. Can we save Lewis with just another peek? Wendy steals Kevin's note on the sword looking like the team logo, and they prepare how they're going to convince Lewis. More time spent outside means as soon as they get in, Lewis is crushed. They do use different takes for the blood splatter, so there is some consideration to making it feel different. But yeah, this was a bum choice.
Osama Bin's supervisor wants me to get rid of these pigeons first.
You're a little confused, but he got the spirit.
The photo gave us the clue. Ian is killing with a gun. But that leads on to our next choice. Does Ian hit or miss?
I'm gonna OD on nail polish. Ian is gonna be embarrassed to death.
He's holding a gun to your head, and that's the first thing you notice?
We're not gonna apologize for trying to save you.
Info Wendy is bugging out as they dump all this theory onto Ian and Aaron. It boils down to, watch out for everything. Ian makes some valid points back like Lewis did.
You're being a fucker, but go on.
It's idle dialogue. We're paying more attention to all the binging and bonging of stuff.
It's fucking windy! How many times do you have to get
indoors with the doors
You've never
closed.
had a draft.
Notice?
You saw what happened to Wendy, right? What's happened to the others? I mean, you just saw their pictures.
In fact, in past cases, if the next in line is saved, it skipped that person.
You haven't seen or been through what we have.
Because of the interactivity thus far, they can't talk too much about the other deaths because we might have seen different versions. Frankie might live. They even suggest it might have changed things, but is she talking about Frankie or the events of the past movies? So many deaths are instant bloodbaths, but you really see the life drain out of her, and hear it. This is horrible, and for the goth GF, we hardly knew you. Erin holds her hand up to her face the same way in the photo. It's Ian's gun that does it, and she even joked about
I'm gonna OD on nail polish.
a nail gun cannot shoot without the trigger being pulled back and the front end, where the nail shoots out, being pushed into the wood. Furthermore, electric nail guns have to be within certain angles in order to shoot. It would be impossible for the gun to shoot like it did in the movie. A cordless nail gun takes about 2 seconds to recharge and cannot fire consecutive nails nearly as fast as depicted. I was maybe a cold-hearted bastard to pick hit in the first place. So let's have Ian miss the pigeons. Maybe an act of mercy could turn out better.
Okay, you can run, babies, but you can't hide. Not from Daddy. Because now he's pissed off, man.
No, still dead. Fuck birds.
I'll just be freaking out every second. Hoping you're okay.
Why? We don't even like each other.
You were going to marry that girl we spent one scene with. Maybe the restraining order was a good idea. We have not one, but 2 alternative scenes. One from a choice we made, and one just a Brucey bonus on disc 2. The bonus is this scene, but as a full oneer with a few extraneous lines of Wendy going off on Kevin for still working at the fair, but that gives him a little extra character that it will go towards sheriff training, and he wants them both still thinking of a future after this. The second extra is earned only if you save Frankie Cheeks. Here he is getting pulled out of a police car,
Find out if there's a log impersonating a slut.
and we get the choice of watching what the cops found on his trusty camera. Easily the wildest special feature. This is such an extra level of character work.
Holy asses, Batman.
It's a creeper tape!
Frankie's here. Frankie is here. Frankie's here.
It is pretty cool we get to see the carnival stuff from a new perspective, and you can see people like Kevin in the background. I'm fairly sure these are different takes as their deliveries are different.
I watched my friends die in a roller coaster accident tonight. You know what I realized? They weren't my friends. They didn't even like me. And I don't blame them. I don't even like myself. Seeing women is nothing but bitches and sluts and hoes. And not seeing them as human beings, you know? I mean, what the fuck is this? Some naked girl around my neck? I won this on the wacky ladder. And you know what? Frankie cheeks ain't wacky no more.
Julie is only now just taking back her jewellery, and is oblivious to the fact that Wendy's been at the police station for 10 hours. We get the 2 clues for Kevin and Wendy. His is obvious, hers a little less clear. That is also not the photo she takes. The flash goes off and his reaction is like a full second delay. While Wendy is driving, Ian follows her. Wendy swerves to miss hitting a black wolf, which is coincidental since Chris Lemke hits a werewolf in Ginger Snaps. His character is also driving a van. In addition, Jesse Moss, who plays Jason, co-starred in Ginger Snaps where he played a teen boy named Jason. 14 out of 43 people found this interesting. The Tricentennial is a terrific location for some Final Destination disasters, with all the dangerous things you wouldn't find anywhere else, like a blacksmith, a horsey. Where else is someone literally calling to be electrocuted?
Fuck you, Ben Franklin.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Fuck what?
The action payoffs are just as awesome. The horse hanging, the harvester, the sword defusal is a great little hero moment. Flashback to the Doublebirds makes me laugh. With so much happening as Kevin and Wendy act to save Julie, there are no choices for us to make, even when death moves swiftly onto the next in line. Poor Perry. Talk about a third wheel. Did this bitch even get on the ride? And somebody stopped that damn horse. Kevin nearly dies, which is crazy he isn't hurt in the slightest from a full horse kick, and a shish kebab in a gas tank gives him a rough tan at point blank range. Fireworks mortar tubes must be at least Schedule 40 ABS tube, not the lightweight Schedule 80 PVC tube shown. The lifting charge would at once explode through such a thin tube. Fireworks are never launched without maintaining a visual reference to the mortar racks, which incidentally are banned by law to be placed on rolling trailers, allowing the pyrotechnician to immediately cease launching if there were any damage or instability to those racks. Here's where it gets tricky. Supposedly, Wendy is next. The clue McKinley was the signage on the cherry picker, but here's a sinister looking Ian McKinley. He wants Wendy to be next and accidentally prevents her death by blocking their path, which is odd given how easy that was. Why did Kevin have to do a cool swords thing? And Def's been cool with the whole 1x1 slasher style, but wouldn't this also have crushed Kevin and Julie hugging Wendy? McKinley versus McKinley is our next choice. Should Ian jump to the right or jump to the left? Neither, since he clearly doesn't move. But if we alter our path here, we get shown the original ending to Final Destination 3. Yes, not a weird fake out ending like at the start, this was where the initial cut of the film actually ended. So we get to see what test audiences thought sucked. Ian gets smushed entirely into paste, and by some logic he takes Wendy's place. And that's that. I guess it ties into his BS about the person killing themselves and ending the chain. Honestly, it falls totally flat. Wendy does a terrible stomp on school property, suggesting she thinks the camera is haunted, and then they walk off. But the camera is haunted and takes one last photo. They made a whole new ending sequence after this, because this sucks. How is the movie only going to be 75 minutes long? That is preposterous. In the novelization, yes it exists. Krista Holt worked off the script, as most novelizations are written that way, and so the book features the original fairground ending. She actually makes sense of it. When the camera goes off, Wendy realizes it's not over, thinking back to what Ian rambled about before. How can she be so certain of the exact order people died? Maybe Ian survived his fall just long enough for the others to fall and die, and then he bled out. Ian died in the order he was always supposed to. Wendy wasn't next. Death's design is still in action. Now that would place Ian's exact moment of death in between Kevin's bisection and Wendy's descent. So yeah, without literally spelling that out, not clear at all. Right, pick the other choice. Ian survives long enough just to give the finger. Again, he sure clings on. Now, the theatrical ending we all know. It just didn't feel like we provided enough closure. We had the second screening this past Monday, and howdy-doo-da-day, we spanked that horse in the fanny. 5 months later, we're on a train with Wendy and 2 new random friends. Bam! Immediate last choice. Does Wendy take another look at the map? Everything here is out of her control. What could this possibly change? Not much, it really only treats us to get an additional shot of a newspaper on the floor. Look at that! The 2 leads from Final Destination 2 are dead. They got pushed into a wood chipper. This was an Easter egg of sorts, as they were meant to reappear boarding the train in person. A fitting conclusion to the trilogy, as one last disaster wipes the board clean. Alas, only one actor was available at the time, and it just wouldn't have the same effect if one character was alive out there. And there's no safety goofs, so they are definitely dead. Whether you look at the map or not, Wendy runs into Julie and Kevin, and spotting all the literal signs, they realise something is wrong. I tell you what's wrong, that guy threw away a half-good candy bar. Julie's comfort is they'll know if something happens to Kevin.
Until something happens to me, and then Kevin, you've got nothing to worry about.
We've seen numerous times that they could have died one after the other, almost at the same time. Hell, on the roller coaster, people were dying at the exact same time. So yeah, another derailment happens. Both Julie and Kevin don't even survive the crash. A somber moment is spent reflecting on the tragedy. It almost feels insincere when it's immediately followed by a Tommy Lee song. Before that though, the crash was just a flash forward, and this time it's way too late because they're already on the train. And if you think that's unlucky, if Wendy checks the map, she screws herself out of a flash forward, which means she just gets hit by the train. Choose their fate. Did we? With how it started, giving us an entirely new ending, even in text form, it laid expectations for the unexpected. And yet it turns out, just as Wendy fared, that we may not have had the control over fate that we had wished for. The other question teased early on, how exactly were we controlling fate? Obviously I don't mean who are we in the cosmic order as an agent of change, like Bloodworth sometimes appears to be, but yet it is a curious inconsistency as to what we have control over. We start with a coin toss, an act of random chance that we can manipulate, but we are acting closely on behalf of the human characters. However, our engagement with the coin really affects when Wendy has her flash forward. The expectation is then set that our actions will have ripples that will both excite and surprise us. It wouldn't be nearly as entertaining if we felt confident in our guaranteed saves. Similarly, the next choice of temperature with the ashes is a seemingly insignificant decision in a myriad of decisions that can have a domino effect. We still cannot directly intervene to save them, but it does give a new chance for one of them to almost prevent their deaths. And that's twice now that we've been directing their decision making. Choice 3 is where things get interesting. Another small difference, one honk or two from Wendy, but it's enough to attract Frankie's attention. This then significantly informs how Kevin acts as he bravely pulls Frankie from death's design. Our first save! It seems now that our two choices with Wendy or Heron involved seem to make the difference, as the ashes were dead without her presence. Alas, our next chance at directly controlling Wendy, our luck does not continue. I noted that it doesn't quite make sense why being more attentive to the photos would be a bad idea, but it makes sense that we would be late to saving Lewis. In a sliding doors perspective, I'm sure there'd be a pang of guilt that Wendy and Kevin took too long, not knowing that they had no chance even if they arrived earlier. Our manipulation of Wendy's decision making cannot ultimately change how Lewis would deny this crazy story of theirs. You might think, like the ashes, we could have control of Lewis, a choice not to take another rep, or to maybe give their photo a look, and then he still takes that last fatal rep. As far as the experience goes, this still keeps us on edge that saving our friends will be no easy feat. With 2 successes in a row, it may instill some confidence in Wendy and Kevin that is lacking in the theatrical cut of the movie. Case in point when they visit the next on their list. Another choice by a human other than Wendy, and one that has implications. We cannot save Erin with either decision, but placing the forked path at Ian's choice lays some responsibility on him that is absent in the theatrical version. It's the bird that he and we failed to deal with which are now the reason Erin is dead. This could then further fuel his arc in wanting some form of revenge on Wendy later in the story. Let's also not overlook the obvious that we didn't know who was next in the list. And thus we, with Wendy and Kevin, had a much tougher job looking for the correct signs. Therefore they did the right thing saving Ian from the falling blood, though later it's inferred that Erin was always meant to be the one killed there and then. From a filmmaking perspective, it would be especially tricky for Wendy and Kevin to prevent Erin's death here. From recognizing how she might die ahead of time, and also that her survival would drastically alter Ian's trajectory in the 3rd act. Speaking of that arc, we have a long time with no choices. Almost the entire 3rd act of the Tricentennial plays out as intended. The entirety of Julie's near death, with Kevin and Wendy helping to stop it, Perry's imminent death, and even Kevin's face-to-face with the fireworks. It's not until all of that is over where we get our next choice. and it's controlling Ian again. Yes, the entirety of the grand finale of Final Destination 3 plays out, and we don't get to make a single meaningful choice with Wendy, our protagonist. And what is our meaningful choice from Ian? Get smushed entirely or get smushed mostly. Again, kind of a cheap out since we don't get any new alternate footage. It's cheeky because they reused the old ending, which really, when I think about it, didn't need refilming because the original ending still implies Death's design isn't over, which it isn't in the new ending we have. Now, it's understandable that they didn't want to tip audiences off that something bad was going to happen. But it's a Final Destination movie, and you're introducing an entire new location on a moving train. This wasn't going to be the nice farewell send-off. My point is that the choice given should still have led to the subway ending, but they wanted to showcase how the theatrical version almost ended. So our choice of Ian listening to the time warp or not somehow affects whether a camera goes off by itself, and potentially whether an entire subway derailment occurs months later, even though it should still definitely happen. We're arguing over the significance of that choice, when the final choice in Final Destination 3 changes diddly squat. Okay, so it removes Wendy's chance at another vision, but that only worsens the theatrical ending, which is the dark comedy of her being unable to do anything about their fates regardless. It also implies, along with the coin at the very beginning, that certain arbitrary things in our lives can affect or trigger a vision. In this case, a map is the deciding factor. But if we're going all the way back, we stopped Death's design from ever playing out. Why not give us a chance at saving the trio at the end of the Choose Their Fate special feature? We literally only chose the fate of one person, and it was Frankie Cheeks, who may still die sometime after this event. This is non-canonical, it didn't happen, so give us a look at something different. Why go to the effort of filming alternate scenes like saving Frankie when you're not going to give us the chance at saving the main characters? I might be getting unreasonably upset at a 2006 DVD bonus, even if it only alters the film slightly. Choose Their Fate is an incredible, unique special feature that should have absolutely become the norm going forward. The less said about the Final Destination, the better. Final Destination 5 was a fantastic cap to the franchise thus far. It just could have been even better if they had put that 110% in that these folks did. I suppose only 2 out of 5 movies doing it would be odd. As it stands, it makes Final Destination 3 stand out, right in the middle, as something truly special. This movie, this DVD, really does represent the peak mid-noughties cinema experience. The magic of DVDs can deliver so much more, so why not go above and beyond and cram it full of this crazy inventive stuff?
2005 was the biggest year for DVDs.
And now, in an all-too digital era, with streaming and pirating, this is becoming a moment in cinema rather than the future it used to represent.
Oh, I've become obsolete. I've been living in the past. I might as well go and run me head over with a truck.
Children and adults are no longer falling asleep during movies and having the looping music of the main menu subconsciously rewrite your brain Manchurian style. Fun fact, during a family holiday I brought along my PS2 and while there bought the DVD of 8-Legged Freaks! There's a scream in that menu loop and my dad came to check if I was alright. What does it say about a father that he thought his son could produce that? Maybe the real fate we incidentally chose was experiencing this back in our formative years of 2006. Perhaps if I had never gotten this DVD, I'd watch the movie on Netflix as an adult and never give it a second thought. In fact, I never did give the reviews for Final Destination 3. Here's what others felt when fate dealt in this movie. All we can say is, death be not proud. If you have to work this hard to take down these dim-witted kids, you don't deserve to be a cosmic force. In a role that occasions much screaming and weeping offset by the occasional doom-laden epiphany, Winstead is often too snivelling and mopey by half, but still provides a solid anchor. The people in this movie are some of the stupidest people in the history of movies. Writer-director James Wong returns to the helm and proves that this horror franchise really has nowhere left to go. But the real tragedy is that promising young actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead must endure this torture. A reminder of how low a filmmaker will sink to pander to our most corrupt tendencies. Why are teenagers attracted to movies in which teenagers die? Maybe it's related to the basic appeal of all horror films. We sit in an audience and think, there but for the grace of God go we. There is also the reassurance that the movie will not contain a lot of long speeches or deep thought, and there will be few adults in the audience to tell you to get the hell off your cell phone because they paid for their tickets. One kid pounds so hard, the weight crashes through the bell and flies off into the air. I expected it to land on somebody's head, or maybe on the roller coaster tracks. And maybe it did, and I missed it, because there was a lot going on. But nearly as I can figure, the weight is still up there somewhere. Editor's note, Ebert's review was cut short when a weight from a carnival game crashed through the window and wiped out his computer. Dan Geyer, president of the Chicago Film Critics Association, has sent out warnings to the next 6 reviewers scheduled to write about this film. Okay, so Final Destination 3 didn't change the hearts and minds of anyone. But as many negative reviews posited, the filmmakers never once pretended they were making anything other than exactly what Final Destination 3 is. This seems to incense the bourgeois critics, who find this deliberate intent to aim lower, as it were, insulting on behalf of the mainstream audience. And perhaps seeing the genuine effort they went into in the special features, they would grow even more exhausted at why such effort was ever spent there. Let's get to Disc 2 and all those special features, and by all those, I mean 2 hours, 35 minutes and 49 seconds worth. That's the amount promised on a Lord of the Rings box set, not a Final Destination sequel. It's enough behind the scenes content to be a DIY guide. You could make your own Final Destination after watching this.
It's one fine looking barbecue pit. Why doesn't mine look like that?
Funny enough, our first special feature is not behind the scenes, and it's not strictly about Final Destination 3, yet it was made exclusively for this bonus disc. A cheeky statistical rundown of real-world aversions to death, and the cultural paranoia of being overly cautious in life. It's a cartoon! With no introduction, we're thrown right into a story.
In the quiet Midwestern town of Miller's Grove, the Holy Cross Church blew up at exactly 7:35 p.m.
where the regular churchgoers all had their own reasons for being late to this one particular service, the seemingly common event that would have led to their fiery deaths, if they had each made it on time. Excuses that range from car trouble to homework to just plain laziness, with no common denominator causing their respective delays.
But the choir members spoke nothing of odds. They believed their lives were spared by divine intervention.
We have to ask,
Bitch, are you for real?
especially when it opens with the key words,
It is believed.
In our first round of Truth or Fiction, Snopes has the answer. Names and location have been changed, even the time was 7:25 p.m, but this peculiar event does have a place in history. Car trouble delayed 2 women, the minister and his wife and daughter were delayed by a dress that needed ironing at the last minute. Others were late because they paused to complete homework, finish a letter, or hear the end of their favourite radio show. One awoke late from a nap. Some could think of no special reason, they were just late. The minister and his wife had to change a soiled dress, not a baby, but details like the sisters calling a fellow student for a ride who themselves were busy with homework is bang on. There was indeed a choir director who couldn't rouse her pianist daughter, but no firefighter saving a kitten from a tree. The easiest evidence that Julie Inc. had found this story is the exact quotation of,
To deeply reflect upon the heretofore inconsequential details of their lives.
It is pronounced so strangely in the narration, almost as one word, but that is itself heretofore inconsequential. What about the football team? This follow-up is far more vague in details, only that a soccer game in the Republic of Congo ended in a 1-1 tie when the entire 11 members of the home team died after the pitch was struck by lightning. The strangest part being the entire away team, also on the pitch, were left standing. There are no fake names or even team names given here, and the closest date is
nearly 50 years later,
which would place this close to 2000. This story appears to be true as well. There is no Snopes page, and every other news article gives the heading in the form of a question, plus all the Today I Learned posts on Reddit. But many of these articles do deliver details, and as Amber Blaze details in their Medium piece, it is a rabbit hole with a dead end. In October 1998, witchcraft and black magic were blamed when a friendly football match in the Congo ended in tragedy. The local team, Benashadi, was facing the Pasang team from the Kasai region during a thunderstorm. Africa is the lightning capital of the world, according to NASA. They have been tracking every bolt of lightning to hit the Earth for 18 years. Benashadi is in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which appears a whopping 5 times in the world's top 10 hotspots. These two stories are great examples of our fascination with storytelling in the real world. The events detailed in this short are not documentarian, and don't even pretend to be. One could watch this and take them as urban legends, and that is not entirely incorrect. It's an interesting case of printing the legend, not the truth, and even though truth may be stranger than fiction, we tend to fudge the details to make an interesting anecdote. But perhaps the case this short is making with its sardonic tone,
these experts would tell us that based on the law of large numbers, freakish events happen more often than you think.
That the reason we're driven to these stories and recycling them however far off the historical fact we may end, is because we share a morbid curiosity in the random spontaneity of life and death. It's why we're watching Final Destination. As much as we fear death, we know we cannot prevent it. Why not have fun with it? Oh boy, here we go. Going postal was such a 90s thing, I would say this is a throwback for 2006. But let's look at some facts. According to a report in mass homicides by employees in the American workplace, between 1986 and 2011, workplace shootings happened roughly twice per year, with an average of 1.18 people killed per year, with 332,161,517 people in America. That's the odds of 3.4312%. With any given day, you could be the 1 in 30. The video clearly shows someone getting shot at the post box, not in the workplace. Now we're looking at general gun crime, and there are 265 million privately owned firearms in the US, but about half are owned by 3% of the US adult population. So whilst about half of gun owners own 1 or 2 guns, 8% of gun owners own 10 or more.
So now I've gone cross-eyed.
Let's go back to the funny monkeys on typewriters.
People's anxieties of what is possible have changed since 9/11.
Reminds me of that tragedy.
Monkeys! Monkeys!
9/11.
Odds show about 1 in 11 million from a quick Google search, but I had to check this oddly specific number, and in a 2005 article states the likelihood of your being in an airline accident is 1 in 440,951. Not the same as crashing or dying. Nothing comes up with this number. I'll dispute that when the time comes. The resolution in this cartoon is the same rational thought we should all be having after watching a Final Destination. We can be cautious, we can keep our ears to the ground and our eyes wide open, but we cannot predict when a freak accident will affect us. More importantly, we cannot spend our lives worrying about our deaths. Back to the movie, or movies. Yes, let's forget the crushing inevitability of our own mortality by enjoying some fictional deaths. And who do we want to see dead? Teenagers! Damn their folly of youth.
Hi, I'm Ryan Merriman. I play the role of Kevin Fisher, the good-looking action hero who starts off in his own world and ends up learning a valuable lesson about life.
Whoa, I already took long enough in my cast introduction, and they already did it with cool visuals and everything?
And I'm the beautiful blonde girl. I'm blonde, right? The blonde. Yeah. Yeah.
Some of their intros are pretty good, I'll give them that.
Hey, I'm Frankie Cheeks, sleazebag cockface voyeur.
Now, I do have issue with the description of the skeptic.
There's certain convenient things that filmmakers write into movies that don't necessarily make a lot of sense. And the characters in the movie seem to buy into it anyways, even though a lot of the audience thinks, well, that's kind of kooky. Well, you know, Ian calls them on that. And you usually find him somewhere in a movie. And in this movie, he looks like me.
Very clearly that is Randy from Scream. But the premise of Final Destination is ludicrous. Everyone is the skeptic. And he's not when Erin dies. He becomes convinced that this is real and Wendy can stop it.
The smart, virginal girl who has the vision.
Well, I don't know if we had to put Jason on blast there. Is that a prerequisite for receiving visions? Kind of puts all the protagonists on blast, but we will be talking about their sex lives later. Hey, that's what I said at the start. Boy, I hope the people half listening to this on another tab don't realise how repetitive this is. Craig Perry accepts that wording and makes it a positive.
They're called dead teenager movies because they appeal to teenagers, and teenagers are the people who go see these movies. Teenagers are the very ones who actually like being scared. They like putting themselves in harm's way. They're testing the boundaries of what they can and can't do.
Somebody there?
And these movies tap into that bravery and weird fear that they want to experience without truly putting themselves at risk.
And that ties in very much with the invention of roller coasters. Planes, trains and automobiles are designed to be safe, get us from point A to B, whereas coasters literally take us in a circle, but with the anticipation that we may not make it. And yes, coaster nerds, they are incredible feats of engineering to ensure the safety of the riders.
So I have no problem with the moniker of dead teenager movie. In fact, if you look at FT2, we tried to break apart from that by having all the teens that we are introduced in the first 15 minutes get killed. Interesting intellectual exercise, but ultimately I think the movie probably would have done better had it just been teenagers.
Wong talks about Final Destination 2 and the contrivances of these separate strangers coming together. It reminds me of the appeal of Lost, except in that case they know they survived a disaster that did happen. So I see Wong's point that it is more effort on the writer's part to drag these people back into one room. Having them all on the same school trip just makes it so much easier. But I will say, like Lost, Final Destination 3 gets at those conflict moments where one event, no matter how life-changing it is, doesn't intrinsically link your destinies together forever.
We were not supposed to leave.
Fuck you, Kevin.
We have to go back, Kate. We have to go back!
We get a folklorist here, really breaking down the traditions of dead teenagers way before they were popular in the 80s. The classic urban legend Mandor Handhook Cardor.
This is all about sex, right?
So that's what Mandor Handhook Cardor is all about. Amanda Crew thinking the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was real is very funny.
I think it just hit me harder because it was a true story.
Test. Okay, this is August 20th, 1973. The time is 3:47.
Also very funny that this video starts with plugs of their latest DVDs, which are all New Line Cinema. And so when this film professor is praising the innovation of Tobe Hooper's 1974 masterpiece, and the video is showing only the still pretty cool Marcus Nispel 2003 remake. Similarly, Ebert praises Halloween, and he shares his own anecdote that he assumes must be true, but no harm in it not.
Which I thought was a very good movie. And so did Siskel, who saw it at midnight at the Chicago Film Festival, and then called a cab to take himself home, and he lived only 2 blocks away from the theater because he was so frightened. He told me that story so often, I guess it must have been true.
He does not consider that a dead teenager movie, as it stood alone at that time, and others have commercialized the formula to put money ahead of art.
And that cheapened its original artistry into kind of a formula that just consisted of chasing and victimizing women.
No matter how much audiences may enjoy the product regardless. Ebert discusses a turning point on his show At the Movies, where they discussed the shifting perspective of audiences from the victim to the killer and how that was degrading for the women in those films.
We did a show called The Woman as Victim that caused a lot of comment at the time. Now the camera identified with the killer instead of empathizing with the victim, and we thought that was not really a very healthy development. And there was a whole group of movies where women were victims, and the whole plot involved them being chased and terrorized and slashed and killed.
Dr. Young brings up Carol Clover's coining of the final girl, a term that has been commercialized, franchised, and bastardized beyond all and any meaning. It's like everyone viewing films through the Bechdel test without having any concept of who Alison Bechdel is or the source Dykes to watch out for.
Although the main audience of the slasher horror, is young males, these young male audiences identified not only with the male killer, but Clover argued that in fact the males in the audience identified with this final girl, and that they first identified with the victimization of her, and then identified with her eventual victory.
Though it's become used as a term to celebrate female empowerment, Clover originally saw it as a method of men placing themselves into positions of vulnerability safely. A male lead would never demonstrate that level of reasonable terror, else look effeminate, less than masculine, and male audiences would reject that. Even with the exaggerated titillation of Final Destination 3, what's different about this franchise is there has always been a lack of a physical monster. Death is sexless, and as such, with the entire trilogy, all of our leads are decidedly big virgins. There's very little gender politics to Wendy as a final girl. With the shedding of tears and her acting of terror, Devon Sawa did a similar job. Wendy's function as protagonist is paired up with Kevin, and the emphasis on them losing their respective partners negates an obvious budding romance angle. Though to bring up Alex, there are a multitude of deleted scenes from that first movie, building up to an alternate ending. Alex and Claire would have sex, Alex would die saving her, and then she would discover she's pregnant and beats death with life. Which in itself turns that sex equals death trope into something strangely puritanical, like the sex led to its intended function, which is to turn women into mothers. Wow, Def, real feminist. Weird tangent. In the novelization, Wendy and Kevin are a lot more romantically involved. Not just at the end where they believe they have beaten death and find a renewed zest for life. Wendy and Kevin realize they have romantic feelings for each other and kiss in the scene where they're viewing the photographs on her computer. But then, we enter full-on fanfiction territory. After washing off the brain matter of their pal Lewis, this happens. Wendy. Kevin grasped her tightly by her shoulders. Wendy, stop it. Stop it. Snap out of it. If you start thinking like that, you might as well lie down and just wait for it to come. His face is streaked with drying blood like hers. Blue eyes, bright and burning. You can't give up on me now, Wendy. I'm not giving up on you. I'm not gonna lie down and let it get to you, Wendy. We've got to fight this thing together. There's got to be some way we can stop it. Wendy tried to look back over at the dripping mess that was left of Lewis, but Kevin caught her face between his palms, tipping it up to look into her eyes. This is a locker room. The boys' locker room, Wendy said. I can't be in here. Kevin let out a dry, mirthless laugh. Getting caught in the boys' locker room is really the least of your worries right now, Wendy. We gotta get out of these bloody clothes, Kevin said. Draping the sweats over a low bench and unbuttoning his shirt, Wendy's gaze was drawn to the white V of his bare, clean chest as the bloody shirt fell away. But her brain still felt dull and sludgy and she looked away. She turned back to him and was horrified to see that he had stripped down to a pair of tight, black boxer briefs. Take your clothes off. Hurry, there's no time for modesty. She looked down at her gore-stained hoodie and tank top. Revulsion at the cold, sticky feel of the bloody fabric against her skin won out over shyness, and she peeled her clothes off, standing and shivering in her plain white bra and panties. She crossed her arms over her chest and hoped absurdly that Kevin couldn't tell how much of what was inside her bra was padding and how little was her. She turned towards him in disbelief, and saw that he was pulling off his underwear. She turned away, shielding her eyes and blushing fiercely, but it was too late. She'd already seen way too much. I can't, she said in a tiny voice, wrapping her arms tighter around her body and shivering, trying not to look at his wet, naked body and failing again. You don't have to take off your drawers, he said. Just try to get the worst of it out of your hair. The hot water soaked her bra and panties and sluiced through her hair. As she scrubbed her body, she marveled at how difficult it was to get the blood to wash away. It had worked its way into every crevice. It had worked its way into every crevice, every delicate wall of her fingertips. Kevin suddenly grabbed her wrist, eyes wide. Someone's coming. Before she could think, Kevin lifted her off her feet, pressing her back against the tile. His hands cupped her ass, holding her up like she weighed nothing at all, and she could feel the hot, naked press of his wet body against hers. She was too shocked to resist, and when he pressed his mouth to hers, kissing her until she could barely breathe. Whoa, dude. Sorry, man. She peeked over Kevin's shoulder and saw a group of 6 athletic and handsome boys standing in the shower doorway. They were mostly naked. 2 had towels around their waists, but the rest just had the towels slung over their shoulders, making no effort to hide their private parts. She had seen more male nudity in the past 5 minutes than in the whole of the rest of her life. She was blushing like a house on fire. Come on, guys, Kevin said over his shoulder. Do a bro a favor, will ya? Just give me 10 more minutes. What'd you say? I'm almost there. Lucky bastard. She kissed him back, wrapping her legs around his waist, just for effect, of course. The boys all chuckled and turned to go. Wendy totally lost track of how long Kevin was kissing her. The thin, wet fabric of her panties felt like nothing between them, and he was rubbing her in a way that made her feel like she was drowning. When he finally broke the kiss, he did not let her down, just held her and looked into her eyes. They're gone, Wendy said. Uh-huh, Kevin said, making no move to put her down. We better she began, but he was kissing her again, and whatever smart, sensible thing she had been planning to say was washed away by that dark, drowning passion. Okay, Kevin said, pulling back and breaking the kiss. If I don't stop this now, I'm not going to be able to stop. That's a really bad idea. He led her gently back down on her bare feet and turned away, covering his obvious arousal with both hands. Do me a favor, okay? Looking back at her and then away, placing one palm against the tile to steady himself. Please go put those sweats on. If you keep standing there so, like that. He closed his eyes. We're both going to get arrested. As she turned away, he cranked the hot water tap to off, standing under the cold spray. Jesus, fuck! Dude, another one of the jocks said. They were just screwing in the shower after they killed him. That's sick, dude! And they still don't have sex. So you know it's fanfiction written by a woman. If you do pay attention to the film, they are wearing gym sweats and have cleaned themselves up. This could have happened. Right, final girls. Clover writes in the preface of a later edition, the public response turned for the most part on the slasher movie chapter, on the figure that I called the final girl. The fate of that trope since then has largely determined, for better or worse, the intellectual and broadly cultural trajectory of the book itself. I say for worse, not because of the final girl's appropriations in novels, film and the like, but because in the course of that history, she has eclipsed other figures and issues in the book, and more to the point, has in her wanderings become a rough sketch of her former self. She now circulates in these mostly cleaner and more upscale venues as a female Avenger, triumphant feminist hero, and the like. This is not to discount some striking reworkings and cogent reviews, only to point out that in much of the wider discourse, the sketch version hijacked not only the character of the final girl, but the chapter in which she figures, and indeed the book as a whole. Not that this account of the final girl is entirely wrong. She's the character whose story we follow from beginning to end, and the one whose vantage, even through whose eyes, we see the action, and it is she who at the end of the film brings the killer down. Needless to say, this sounds more like a male protagonist than a female one, and it was indeed a startling development to have not just a few movies, but dozens of them, with a girl at the centre of the story. She's a boyish girl, even named something like Stevie or Will, but a girl nonetheless. As a sketch, at least, the final girl does look something like a female hero, but a sketch is only a sketch. Fill this one out with the dimensions of effect, identification, pacing, and audience, and the picture gets kinkier. Yes, the final girl brings down the killer in the final moments, but consider how she spends a good hour of the film up to then. Being chased and almost caught, hiding, running, falling, rising in pain, and fleeing again. Tortured survivor might be a better term than hero. Ebert really did believe that we were putting women through torture for pleasure, but Clover made an interesting connection between horror and action. The women's movement has given many things to popular culture. One of its main donations to horror, I think, is the image of the angry woman, a woman so angry that she can be perceived as a credible perpetrator of the kind of violence on which the status of the full protagonist rests. The victim and hero functions are also fused in the action film. Like the tough girls of horror, Rambo and Dirty Harry undergo all manner of indignity before they rise to annihilate their tormentors. John Ellis says it is a fantasy that is characteristic of males. Oh, blink and you'll miss it. That's Mary throwing debris at her co-stars for the scene. We stan an angry woman. We are only halfway into a 24-minute special feature and I've already gone on 2 massive tangents. This isn't even the longest special feature. Some good points by Perry and Lemke on the blurring of genres. Silence of the Lambs won an Oscar for declaring itself a violent thriller, not a horror. Perry considers Final Destination supernatural thrillers, despite leaning far heavier into the horror tropes.
And for people to say Friday the 13th and movies like that are horror movies, I disagree. For the most part, the first part of that franchise is a guy killing people. That's a thriller.
A self-aware self-admission. It is so cheeky and naughty to divulge in the sleaziness of horror.
They're black comedies. I see them as thrillers and the audience gets a giggle.
And it helps that it's profitable. But if we the filmmakers want any respect, then we must rise above the denigrated genre labels.
The thing that I can't keep up with is that the fans of these movies become students of them. And they get the DVDs, and they look at all the documentaries, the making of. The people who read Fangoria or other magazines like that, it used to be that kids would run down the aisle screaming in fear. Now they're saying, boy, Rick Baker really did a good job on that effect. They know who does the makeup, they know how the CGI works, they've maybe done something on their own computers, they've studied it in school, and so they objectify it. And so it isn't necessarily plain as violence for them, it's plain as an artificial experience that they can analyze.
A fascinating understanding by Ebert that some would view as hypocritical of his own argument, which has never been as shallow as,
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
he knows what fiction is, and he knows teenagers get that too. What he rallies against is the studios delivering the easiest to produce, least to think about fast food sludge designed to sponge your money up with. Ebert values cinema, and perhaps that's why he agreed to be a part of this, because he saw that the people behind the camera and in front of the camera were just as engaged and switched on as he wanted them to be.
And the kids are thinking, well, of course those guys don't like the movie, but it looks like I might enjoy it, you know, or I want to see a stupid movie. And frequently people will very willingly go to movies they expect to be bad, but they're very cautious about going to see movies that they fear might be good. This is peculiar.
Tony Timpone, former head of Fangoria, mirrors Ebert in a way, positive about audiences more engaged with the process of filmmaking and champion crew members like the special effects people.
The effects artists became more popular than the actors in these movies. Fangoria at the time made them out to be the rock stars of the new wave of horror film.
Ebert simply wants people to at least be as engaged with the characters before the special effects people come in and destroy them.
No, it did not pass the blood test. There was a lot of aerosol in the air, and for me, we want more chunky goodness.
The cast seem to have a strong grasp about what it's all about.
Final Destination is undoubtedly a dead teenager movie in the way that there's teenagers and they die, and that's what the movie's about.
And especially nice to hear from Alex, since Erin is such a nothing character. The actor gets a lot to say here. Right here interested me in revisiting this, as I probably watched this special feature more than the movie itself. It instilled the sense that the characters in film were much more than they really were.
Obviously, we don't want to completely piss off the youth of America by getting too smart with anything, but it allows its characters to be a little bit more philosophical than your average horror movie, because this isn't some slasher with a grudge against hot chicks with big tits. This is death we're talking about here.
Jung talks about horror as a means of teens grappling with what's worth dying for, to instigate a sense of what's worth living for. In the video, her words are paired with the imagery of Wendy showing Lincoln and 9/11, incredibly motivated tragedies.
There's been Columbine and 9/11. I think everybody's more scared or everybody's more cynical. The way you wrote the kids, it just seems like a meaner world.
We have this discussion time and time again with real-life violence, and the media, or certain demographics, will decry why did this have to happen, while the so-perceived randomness is all too obvious to other demographics. There is law and order in our reality, though the two are often mutually exclusive.
You know, and it wasn't that way. Yeah.
Critics like Ebert probably feel this exact sentiment. Teenagers on screen are dying for no good reason. Even if the plot clearly sets up the killer's backstory, this could create an apathetic feel in the audiences, because they're being told everything just happens for no reason. Morgan talks this difference in writing Final Destination in 1999 and 2005. But if Final Destination 3 featured two disasters and ended with everybody helpless to the non-stop barrage of death.
Because how far can we go before the audience has had enough and is just totally disgusted and doesn't want to see these films anymore?
The filmmakers didn't design this film to bum everyone out. This isn't come and see. Audiences are meant to leave on a high, having enjoyed the ride. The easiest answer is it's not real. And yes, your innate sense of morality should not be damaged with the clear separation of fiction and reality. It's like a roller coaster. Your brain is reacting like you're going to crash, even though you know better. That's just the appeal of it.
I grew up when you didn't even lock the door to the house before you went to sleep at night. And we've lost that world, but we've lost it maybe not so much in real terms as in our minds, because the news and the movies and television keep telling us, you're not safe, you're not safe. And so it's changed the way we behave. And then because we think that way, we go to these movies as an exorcism, because as long as it's happening to the screen, it's happening to somebody else. And I don't know, I think there should be a period in life when you feel immune, when nothing can hurt you, when nothing scares you, when you're going to live forever. And we all lose that, but I'm not sure that we should lose it any sooner than necessary.
At the end of the day, I don't really have a tidy answer. You may have to respond in the comments as to why you personally enjoy dead teenager movies. On the topic of horror and the thought that goes into it, we are finally at some good old-fashioned behind-the-scenes production work. We'll see that they shot on a real roller coaster over and over again. Why not hook some mics up and record the real deal? Same reason I'm guessing this tube didn't make that noise, or that severed ass didn't make that noise. Like before, print the legend. Fake sounds better. Go ask your mom. Such a brief segment, I would have liked to have seen other scenes getting Foleyed, but nice anyways. Also nice. This documentary catches some crazy footage of a genuine on-set accident. A 900-pound hydraulic cylinder intended to yank the truck forwards instead breaks loose. The steel cable snaps and whips around, taking out 2 cameras.
Whistling across the set like it was a 2x4. We're in trouble.
Don't worry, it was already a dangerous mechanical stunt, so the crew was safely distanced. They didn't even break those cameras, but it still cost them.
Oh, we're fucked.
3 weeks later, they had the scene set up again, this time just having the truck actually speed down into the rigged pickup. You get to see the truck really moving in the shot, so maybe it worked out for the best. From scares to laughs, we shine a light on the significance of the key grip, a role next to Best Boy in how much absolutely nobody knows what it is. And his job here is to clap the woodcuts for the perfect prompt to scream to, a responsibility he takes very seriously. This is not actually the main job of the key grip, they supervise all grip crews and report to the DP. Back to the stunts, with a lot of pyrotechnics. More of Cutler, who looks like Rob Hubel doing a Nathan Fielder impression.
Don't come in afterwards until we clear the area. Pretty straightforward.
Brief, but nice to see stunts performed safely, and good to see someone actually get burned by the heat. Cool guys don't look at explosions because they wouldn't have any eyebrows left. People talk about miniatures as if Lord of the Rings was the last movie to ever use them. Look how cool this subway system is. You think they're just playing with models? That's 300 pounds of metal hurled at 70 miles per hour, and it's intended to explode. Oh, and they're firing the trains with bungee cords and preying on gravity to keep it on track. The final technical shot may just be the trickiest of them all. Mary shedding a genuine tear on command. As complicated as the train collision is, it's a single tear naturally falling from her eye at the exact time the camera zooms out. Ryan just standing there like Jim from The Office. Such a peculiar moment to end with, as this is essentially a dumb horror movie. But we've been over that.
And, you know, we didn't really prepare Mary for that.
I'm sorry, I don't think it's going to work.
People are gonna view these actors as doing exactly what was required, say dumb dialogue and scream. There's heightened emotions to be performed despite the uncomplicated context.
You guys, I'm sorry, it's just...
Okay, okay. Couldn't Ariel put a tear in there for her, for crying out loud?
A lot of reviews did highlight Mary for what she brought, which makes this a valid extra to demonstrate just why. There's Riley Stearns at the last second. Moving on. This one comes into promotional materials, along with TV spots and a theatrical trailer. Julie Ng is clearly having a lot of fun here as the director. We get the old-timey 1950s intro to roller coasters, and we get a little statistics just like the other shot.
America's coasters are perfectly safe. Odds are 1 in 250 million of a roller coaster malfunction. You are more likely to die driving to an amusement park than dying at one.
Even in the introduction with Wong, we're getting snippets of all the stunt work, so this will be fun.
So you couldn't do that again, or you couldn't do something that's so similar that, you know, people felt like you were just repeating yourself.
My wife said that deja vu is like God's way.
Perry seems like a chill dude, but every time we see a clip of him, he's asking something light and silly.
A ventricle from her heart actually landed her cheek. Too much? That didn't go over very well.
Very down to earth with his ambitions for the third entry in a horror franchise.
Just to make it not suck.
They make some good points as to why Final Destination 3 as a sequel develops ideas from the first two with the investigative side. Past protagonists figured out the order and then just warned people to be careful. Wendy is actively searching for clues as to who is next and how their deaths are foretold in the photos. We have another curtain call, and you start to think all these extras were made by different people, but it's the same director. Counter to the trope intros, our cast gives a little more genuine insight into their roles.
Type of person in high school that you probably hated. She seems self-centered, but I think inside she's very sweet.
Characters like Erin really aren't much deeper than they appear.
We're kind of like the dark, outcast kids in the movie. We both paint our nails black.
But Sam Easton has a whole backstory for Frankie Cheeks.
Would like to be a filmmaker in the adult industry.
Texas Battle brings up more real tropes.
But I cheated death the first time, you see? And I'm kind of happy about that, because if you see in the past scary movies, see, the black man don't live too long. But see, in this movie, the black man gonna live for a little while.
But that's only because he disappears after the funeral service. He just isn't in the movie that much. But he doesn't die first, so I'll give him that. The second half of this extra goes into the big disaster, and how excited were they to tackle a coaster crash?
New Line said, we're doing Final Destination 3. It's a roller coaster. I go, okay.
The way this all comes together, of course you know these actors, stuntmen, or even dummies are not getting thrown about on a real ride.
If you're gonna crash a car, it's best to crash a car. If you're gonna crash a roller coaster, the best possible scenario is to crash the roller coaster.
But just imagining that sequence, and then putting it all together with real footage of a ride, digital scans of a park, green screen carts with the actors.
We're not gonna crash a roller coaster.
Even before they're strapped in, the entire starting section is an elaborate set. Months of disparate work that everybody has to be 100% confident will come together in the final edit as one convincing sequence. A key detail in what makes the coaster sequence so frenetic is the moving cameras. Gives it a whole extra sense of life, like a cameraman hanging on the front. They were figuring out anywhere they could put cameras that wouldn't get obliterated by the framework they were flying through.
My grips got on there with a bunch of high-density foam and basically stuck wings up and out the side of the roller coaster at various points of it where we thought we would want to put camera mounts. You know, they started out about this long, and then they'd hit something and they'd break off. Eventually they got shorter and shorter and shorter until pieces stopped breaking off, and then that's when we knew that we could stick our camera out this far on this side and this far on this side. It probably saved smashing a lot of cameras, all that work.
Good fun seeing the cast try to break each other's records and riding the coaster. Mary and Ryan did 17 during their shooting, so Texas and Sam did 21 before even having to shoot their scenes.
I don't want to be in this place, Daddy.
The CGI stuff is cool to watch. A tough shoot when you want to show the real actors for almost all of it. Actually thrown about in their seats, yanked out by wires, massive free fall heights.
Wow, this really sucks balls.
Toxic carbon poison gives out in a rush of fuel. And it is going to. And I'm going to do something like
Not just succumb to what's inevitable, to kind of fight your way through life.
If that doesn't satisfy the sick bastards of America, well then, I don't know what will.
This is the main attraction. For DVD nerds. I guess the movie is usually that, but this is a feature-length 90-minute production diary. Like Planned Accidents teasers at the end, this is every little thing you might want to know. Production meetings, shot lists, storyboards. Like Wong says, for a movie that never slows down, every day and every page is some big production. We get the filmmakers giving honest thoughts on how to get a production practically done. We've had fun promos with the cast, but here's the real studio processes, like asking for people who are hot.
So it's a tough thing to know who's going to be hot, you know, at the time of the movie's release.
Because I was kind of thinking blonde, and maybe that's what got me. That's what got me kind of off track.
Recognizable faces on TV might be a sound get, but a film comes out a year and a half later, so those shows could stink and sink. And by the time your movie comes out, your stars are unemployed and forgotten. Producer Rich Brenner makes the case that unknowns are better for horrors because those people are more willing to sign up for getting brutally murdered than well-respected stars.
I happen to think that a lot of the actors have very promising careers ahead of them. This is hopefully the break for most, if not all of them.
It was always intended that we'd shoot the kids on the roller coaster first.
Day 1 of 63. We're getting shown the full picture here. And not the happy everything's great promotional fluff. Day 1 is a disaster. They want to start with the roller coaster sequence, but the weather's too bad, so they reschedule to the graduation scene. Except now it's sunny. What can the actors do but run their lines in rehearsal? Everyone is there, you either stand around doing nothing or something. I like the hustle of script supervisor Helga, just constantly jabbing at Wong and Morgan for their script writing.
That's it. Those are the words you two wrote.
No, that was those kids from UCLA.
Julie averts her eyes. Hurt. ...
Faulkner would like that.
It's too good. It's a beautiful thing.
Sudden left turn. A Diary of a Wimpy Kid retelling of how Wong and Morgan became childhood friends and got into film school together. Even the little details are sometimes literally huge. The styrofoam devil sculpture for the ride, it weighs about 2 tons with 7.5 tons of support made in 6 weeks. And yes, it has balls.
The balls!
And Frankie does ask the Ashes to cup them, but we never see his footage. Cool to see Wong sitting with the cast just chatting, being open about figuring things out.
If you were snake on 5 spots and you're behind the first people are already going. So how do you get to the number 1 spot? Anyways, you see what I'm getting at? It becomes very complicated.
Yeah, you have to simplify it.
I know, well, trust me, at, 11 o'clock last night I was going, huh?
A lot of logistics, and none of this ultimately matters in a film like this. That sounds dismissive. It is important knowing who dies in what order, but they show how Lewis has to get held up by tickets in order to end up later. We don't see any of this in the final film. And the biggest factor is learning that Julie was on the ride. Wong is sat there figuring out the logistics, but it's never once questioned how Wendy's freakout does seem to draw Julie off the ride, but then she never mentions it during the entire film. You wouldn't think to need a fight choreographer if a punch is thrown, but then the stunt coordinator needs to know if people are getting knocked down, who else is involved. Look, Erin has a stunt double for her backhand.
I'd like to see them all kiss and make up.
Thank you, camera reload.
Ah, look at Mary sitting on a tot of a big-ass iPod Gen 3 and the iTrip for FM radio play. Yeah, I looked it up, I was curious. Gen 3 came out in 2003, so she had that for a good while making sad playlists. And did I try to look up those songs? Only because I'm a chronic procrastinator with completion anxiety and can't finish videos like this. Also, mentally reminding myself that a song in 1999 is not old if she's in 2005. God, we're old. What are we doing with our time? Both Mary and Wong talk about the film people wanting someone
blonde and, perky.
That's not generally how Final Girls were until recently. And if Mary Elizabeth Winstead could not book a horror sequel, the studios really have no idea what they're looking for. She talks about wanting to have more time with certain emotional scenes, and this is just her winging it.
A little bit frustrating when you have an idea that you're going to be doing something and you're preparing for one thing, and then all of a sudden it sort of just shifts to something completely different, especially if that different thing is something that you really wanted to take time with and really work on before you went into it. But kind of have to just let it go and just do the best you can and hope that, it turns out the way you want it. So I'm excited to watch that to see how that turned out, because in my head I think it turned out pretty good, but you never know.
A little moment to see the actors getting ready with hair and makeup. Is Mary paler than the goth girl?
Double the costumes. Double the costumes in case they throw up.
Everyone takes bets on who will puke the first. Seems Big Guy Texas is the choice of many, if only just to laugh at him.
What?
Did they try sending a cameraman on this ride? That's insane. They definitely had their work cut out for them. 1 minute 36, that's the time spent on one go of this ride.
Now, the first night we rode the roller coaster, I think our record was 22 times that night. Never imagining that we would shatter that record many times over the course of the 3 nights that we shot it.
22 times in one night. That's 35 minutes straight of being on this roller coaster.
Just when we get on it, the first time it goes up, it stops. It stops right before it goes down the dip, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Kate, we're gonna die.
everyone acting in character when the ride breaks down.
Frankie, don't do that. The roller coaster stopped.
Oh, I'm a girl and
I'm scared.
I'm scared.
I am. I hate this.
Why don't you give me your hand and I'll give you something to be scared about?
Save the black man. Save the black man.
His prop camera is real. It's a shame we don't get any shots from that in the film. We've seen the digital trickery used to extend this ride, but here's some old school effects. That coaster goes straight into the camera via a mirror, which of course is smashed, but better than the camera. Equally cool is flipping all of their clothing mirrored.
Does not mean that Kevin wears Winnie's clothes and Winnie wears Kevin's clothes.
So that all the left turns become right turns for twice the footage.
Hey, what school do you go to? I still don't get it. Will it look like we're going backwards?
That's how they did all of Titanic. They only built half the boat.
Oh.
So that when you flip the film now, you end up with a whole boat.
A very precise and real moment in daily filmmaking. We've got scenes and we've got daylight. One has to be over before the other, so work fast.
We're looking this way. She walks into frame. Action! Here we go. Action! Do we have time to do one more? And cut, reset. Background. Action!
Great snippet of Ryan deciding how to pull out the sword and finding the right balance between what looks good on camera, what is physically the easiest way to do it, and what doesn't look too over the top.
What do you say? Look too Zorro-ish.
There's some audition tapes where Amanda reads for Erin, got called back to read for Carrie, got called back again for one of the Ashes, and finally got the part of Julie.
Let me explain this to you. I'm practicing because I have problems with these two fingers. They don't stay. And apparently I have really ugly middle fingers, and you mean it when you do it like this. So fuck you, Wendy.
A lot of credit to her. She did all the stunts getting dragged by a horse. Well, crew members with a harness, but that's still gotta her, and everyone speaks highly of her for committing.
I think, you're just battered. Every movement you make is painful.
Hopefully this time.
Also, let's give it to those horse wranglers.
There was the fact that we were doing it at night. We had times we had fireworks going off. We had a crowd of extras out there.
Look at the crowd of people that thing is stampeding through. They did a damn good job avoiding actual accidents.
I was like, who the hell is that guy? Because I shook everybody's hand. He was like, vote for me in 2006. And I was like, that was fucking random.
Color of all fast food restaurants. Think about it. What are the colors? McDonald's, yellow and red.
The location magic that set dressers do. Not only do they transform a blank wall into a fast food place, but it has to be the perfect location for this stunt.
Jim was not a believer. He looked at me like I was out of my mind. And we did it, we designed it, we showed him all the renderings, we walked him through it again. He still wasn't sure until the day he actually walked on set.
They never do talk about the Choose Their Fate feature, but we do get a quick snippet of them filming an alternate scene here, with Kevin either jumping onto the car to save Frankie or jumping to the side of Wendy. To think how complicated these stunts are in the first place, and they're dedicating their time to shooting a DVD bonus feature at the same time as the main movie. Some quality time with the actors. Sam really took his role and ran with it, even though New Line didn't want him, saying he looked too old. But Morgan recorded some of his stand-up to show his talents.
I don't like wearing my Montreal Expos jersey anymore, because now that the team's gone and I have a shaved head, I look like a sick kid with one last wish.
The fact that we're seeing this footage is crazy for a behind-the-scenes feature. Some cool special effects shots with the splooge head.
Splooge head, feeling that that's what causes that to click. So I don't know if we gotta be down there for more chain to feel like the weight is pulling it, we come up and then it clicks, or, you know what I mean?
Went to the Home Depot on Sunset Boulevard.
Of the many challenges that we sort of encountered in Final Destination 3, the first is just coming up with fresh places to kill people.
A good comment from Perry that the trick of making sequels to Final Destination is the accidents have to be relatable. Not everyone does extreme sports, but a lot of people visit DIY stores. The toughest gig of the set decorators? Going around an entire DIY store and hiding every single brand and label, hanging up new signs, even writing prices on for that personal touch. And doing this all while the store is closed at night and being gone when the place opens in the morning. More Erin! Or Alex. It's starting to feel like I'm shouting her out like it's a game of Really? Once again, I applaud her for trying to make something out of this character.
So your death is fucking complicated. Like trying to be sarcastic or over the top. I kind of wanted to do it more like she doesn't know. You know what I mean? I'm being sarcastic. Like just how I auditioned it.
She went to rock concerts to get into the scene of it.
I'm hoping people notice my forklift driving, because I took 2 days to learn how to drive a forklift.
This is so dangerous!
You need to be careful! He's forklift certified! Did you know that I'm forklift certified?
Oh no!
That means I'm allowed to kill you, and the law will say, hey, that's cool, that's fine. Oh, yeah, son of a bitch! Oh dear God, help, no!
Take that, pylon. And because the forklift usually involves driving around things that are going to be knocked over, I'm going to crush other actors, I usually tend to sort of focus on the forklift. So when you're watching the movie, you're like, God damn, that's some great forklift driving, but God, that guy sucks. You'll know why.
The camaraderie when talking stunts and actors doing it themselves.
It's foam core, which is kind of like marshmallow, the marshmallow of paper.
That's such bullshit.
Wait a minute, that's Mary's stunt double. She didn't throw wood on her co-stars at all. Hollywood, you've done it again. Another great special effects shot. Exceptionally done life cast head. Now I've drawn too much attention to her, I don't feel comfortable saying she's got a good splooge head.
You had this great epiphany, and then we riddled that bitch with nails.
Okay, different vibe now. Texas is giving us a cribs tour of the set and talking to the guys. White boy Ryan fumbles terribly. Again, more genuine behind the scenes moments with actors reacting to the director cutting lines on set. Imagine having to learn all of that shit and then unlearn it on the day. More Helga appreciation.
Should catch it. Texas, that's supposed to be a question, not a period. Should catch it, I'm telling you, man.
She makes a point that Texas is
the king of adding the word fuck. Motherfucker, my nuts, man. See, the white man might pay me, but the black man running shit.
You gotta love his delivery being so over the top that he laughs as soon as the take is over. This is definitely the world's most dangerous weightlifting machine.
I just pooped myself.
Another breakdown of the head casting and exploding. A lot of head damage in this movie. A fantastic detail that I don't think I've seen before. The monitors can layer 2 shots and fade between them in order to get the right position on the day, rather than figuring it out in post.
Oh, you're gonna splooge again?
The splooge gun, as they call it, was actually basically right in front of my face.
Hey, shit!
The splooge is pretty gross, but it's also pretty funny.
A lot of talk from cast and crew about the necessity of nudity for this scene.
Let's start with the nudity. Yeah, let's just start with it and get it over with. I originally was like...
Shalon and Crystal take off their tops at that point. Ha ha ha, whoa.
Oh my God, there's her boobs. And then you're like, okay. And then you're like, okay, now I'm just like disturbed. You don't even think about the nudity anymore. Like,
outside of those particular shots, they're wearing clothes just off screen for most of it. Morgan talks about how he researched tanning beds, naked and all, and he felt that claustrophobia, the vulnerability, the sensation that parts of his body were starting to cook. When you get that visceral feeling, you know audiences are going to freak out. You're throwing cracked glass, sparks, fire, and yeah, maybe being naked does make this all the more terrifying. Not a head explosion, but an incredibly good burn stunt. And that makeup on the actress is fantastic. An odd point to bring up the score, but Shirley Walker talks about this scene because until the finale, a lot of deaths are pretty sudden. This is the only drawn out, gruesome sequence, so the score is constantly swelling and rising and building as things get out of control. The grossometer for scoring is adorable. Back to the roller coaster. Look at that fisherman who steals the camcorder. Yoink! Holy shit, for real? Green screen does not mean fake. These actors are strapped in a real mechanical bull, in the air. The stunt team are being hurled about, it's incredibly taxing on all of them, and they thought this shit was over when they left the theme park. Some very honest thoughts here about how much all the harnesses and stunts fucking hurt.
I feel like I got raped by a 400-pound gorilla. That was one of the worst things I've ever done in my entire fucking life.
I literally felt like I was cut in half at the hips.
Yeah, this bastard here.
Yeah, that's right.
Why the fuck are we in these goddamn
my
harnesses?
hips, I don't
It's not
feel.
the belt, it's the harness.
I don't feel
It's
it.
the belt cutting into the fucking harness. I could have dealt with the fucking belt on its own.
I just can't, like, no wonder they saved this for the last, because we might have not made it.
Most people complained, Texas just fell asleep. Yoink! Nice breakdown of Ryan's breakdown. The CGI guys need all these layers in order to put together his bisected death. Then we start getting the actor raps, and everybody likes each other.
It's actually kind of sad. That's the only bad thing about liking people you work with, is you miss it.
This is easily the reason I was endeared to this film, and why I was compelled to make this video. Ryan brought the PSP! No, but for real, acting is such an emotional job, not just faking it on camera. These are real young people who get to know each other and understand each other because they're sharing this unique, intense experience. And then the high has to come to an end, you all say goodbye, and then who knows? Maybe you work together again. Maybe you just meet at a party, or a premiere, or a horror convention 10 years later. I made good friends at university, and through no fault of anyone, we just stopped talking after graduation.
You never mean for it to be that way, it's just always how it is. Always.
Actors have to go through that time and time again, and it's something you just don't think about when you watch the movie. But then you see the special features. I'm seeing double, 4 Wendy's. Maybe Ming is psychic.
I just have a feeling it's not over. Next week they'll be like, okay, so we forgot to do this shot. So we're meeting back in Vancouver. One more time. I don't know, it just feels, it doesn't feel finished yet.
So they totally admit to the disappointing first ending.
You can't end like that.
Which is refreshing to see that from day 1 to day whatever this is, they deal with the problems as they come.
Mainly, everybody said they hated the ending. So, I'm gonna shoot something else.
Very funny that the writers were expecting the studio to want to hold on to their main talents, just in case for a sequel, or maybe it's just too mean. But it turns out New Line were totally down for killing everyone.
Craig says, why don't we kill everybody? I'm like, they're never gonna let you kill, the nicest, most talented cast we've had in this franchise. The New Line guy says, oh, you know what? I'll tell you what they haven't seen. Kill them all.
Good point that the Final Destination finales are rarely as big as the opening acts, which is rare for a film traditionally, so this was an unexpected twist to have 2 major disasters.
All that horse shizzle my nizzle for nothing. Oh my god, we're doing this, and I'm dying. We could die. It's gonna be awesome. Woo!
Make that 3 disasters. Chris is back, nearly 5 months later, so he can go back on a green screen for a single shot of his revised death. Everything I said about those teary, heartwarming rap parties, reshoots tend to make those goodbyes awkward.
And I think maybe they've just brought me here to work just to sort of gloat about the fact that they've totally written me out of the end of the movie, and I'm just gonna have a little chair set aside where I get to watch the other actors, Sean and Laura, those bastards, take my place. But no, then I show up today and apparently I'm getting cut in half.
Some nice details about the success. We don't get to see the premiere, but by all accounts they saved the film with a positive ending. And just like that, the speed of Wong and Morgan to wrap proper on December 2005 and start filming Black Christmas on January 2006, with several of the same actors no less. Even Julie Ng comes back for the special features. Why, fuck goodbyes I guess, I'll be seeing these guys soon enough. And so, back to the main menu. And perhaps like so many of us did back in the mid-2000s, and hopefully still today, some of you in the audience have dozed off. And so I will honour that Manchurian loop by continuing to ramble on until you wake up in the morning and also think how underrated Alex Johnson is. To think though, there are on-screen and IMDb credits for the special features, and there are sites and YouTube videos preserving DVD menus. But who made them? Those are the real unthanked heroes. Editing dev from the future with a breaking minor discovery. I hadn't captured every page of my UK DVD, and my disk drive broke, so I found someone else had already done it. This US DVD differs slightly, with a New Line logo in the corner. Interact with this to find those additional credits. If you still want to enjoy all this for yourself, it's on YouTube. But to enjoy it authentically as I did, the Trilogy, Quadrilogy, Complete Collection for both DVD and Blu-ray all contain the same special features. The Blu-ray has the additional bonus of being all on a single disc. To be fair, Final Destination 1 and 2 also have a good amount of special features as well, but I got Final Destination 3 all by itself when it came out, so it made a singular impression. Double checking the DVD box set, there is actually quite a bit for these first two. Final Destination 2 even has a Choose Your Fate feature. I might have to pull a Final Destination 2 and tackle these films in reverse order. Wait, that doesn't make sense, what about Final Destination 4? Oh, just 2 features. Thank fuck. Did something just pull out of my eye? Wait a minute. Did I just flash forward this whole fucking review? Fuck this. Fuck. Thank God I don't have to end on a half-hearted Channel Awesome sketch. In fact, coming off this incredibly brief wrap-up, I wonder just how deeply I did explore this venture, given I had no answers to my rhetorical questions. I found Julie Ng is still in the business with Bandersnatch Pictures, and I emailed her with a vague query on whether she could recall anything about this project, namely, why so much? I could not have expected the level of detail and thought she provided in her response. Thanks for your kind and very unexpected email. I just passed what looked to be a Final Destination marathon of some sort on TV. Caught the tail end of FD3. It's been a while. So, a video project on special features? That's cool. How do you go about it? Do you have a YouTube channel? What other films have you covered supplements for? I'll do my best to answer your questions without writing a novel to you. Honestly, one of the main reasons this movie got such an intricate release was that it was the first time I was given the opportunity to be in charge of producing the special features of a film. I had been working in collaboration with David Cronenberg's wife, Carolyn, on A History of Violence, and I think they were liking the work we were doing on that. Having worked very closely as Morgan and Wong's assistant for a few years, I would like to believe they trusted I could do a good job on FD3. I fully realise this film is no cinema classic, nor does it require the level of depth that it got. But in my mind at the time, I was gunning to treat the supplementals like it was Lawrence of Arabia for the Criterion Collection. Morgan and Wong gave me carte blanche for full coverage on set and the freedom to do my thing. They are extremely cool, low-key, ego-less guys, and are not precious about filmmaking secrets. Nor do I think they had any illusions that they were making a deadly serious horror masterpiece. I got very lucky that their young cast were comfortable with me being around every day with a video camera. For me, I saw this gig as an opportunity to cover what was happening every day as an on-set videographer. And I too was young, not yet jaded, and wildly/ignorantly ambitious back then. I pitched a wide variety of things that I thought could be tied tonally and thematically to the film, sometimes more serious than the film itself, which got rejected. At the end of the day, I just wanted an excuse to make short films, and I am a legit movie nerd for the filmmaking craft. I had become friends with many of the regular M&W creative team over the years, and I wanted to showcase their hard work. Combined with that, New Line Home Entertainment invested a lot in their special features. This was the heyday of DVD. For example, consider those mega sets of the Lord of the Rings trilogy that were being made at this time. This was the bar I aspired to, even if for a dead teenager movie sequel. The team that ran the home entertainment division there were the best. I miss working with them still today. NLHE had an exclusive branding called Infinifilm, which was an early version of sort of interactive behind the scenes. It was like a VH1 pop-up video, if you remember. or are old enough to remember. A way to watch the film, fun facts and links to mini behind the scenes beats would appear as you watched the film. FD2, I think, was an Infinifilm release. They wanted to do it for FD3 as well, and so in addition to the featurettes I had already pitched and budgeted for, Kill Shot, Dead Teenager Movie, It's All Around You, commentaries, we made so many little segments and compiled text factoids. This was ultimately scrapped at the 11th hour because the interactive choose your own death part of the disc, which was the first time that had been done, was complicated enough. I don't know this for a fact, but I think the technology was not there yet to be able to support both. There are a number of short behind the scenes pieces on the disc, I think labelled as severed pieces, nothing more than a couple of minutes. Those were originally Infinifilm segments. We picked out the best ones we had made and salvaged them here. There were exclusive bonus discs for Walmart. There was just so much behind the scenes material we had made for this movie. It's ridiculous. So much funny and creative work also by my partner in crime at the time, editor Michael Lane, this really became a 24/7 gig for the both of us. New Line wanted and needed the usual behind the scenes making of stuff, which was also needed for the publicity end of things. But they were also open to stuff like looking at a film from a pop cultural standpoint, i.e. Dead Teenager Movie. To be honest, I'm not sure why they said yes to the animated short, but I'm grateful they did. That was more of a pet project of my own interests at the time, mostly about fate/free will and probability. It's a little hazy right now, trying to remember other details on how it came to be. I mostly remember that I originally was imagining that it would be in the aesthetic of generic people and graphics you see in airplane safety cards that you see tucked in the seat in front of you, linking it to FD1. But the animators Nick and Helder had such a distinctive visual style that it seemed wrong to limit it to just that. I was friends with Nick and Helder, and we thought we would try to make this on a very small budget as a creative exercise. The timeline and budget was unrealistic, but you do such things when you're young and you don't know any better. I do remember when I delivered it, the New Line folks were really enthusiastic about it. One of them said they should have released this as a short in front of the movie in the theatre, which of course was a thrilling compliment that I really held on to. With respect to the choose their fate aspect of the DVD, that is its own long story. I was fairly involved on the creative end of that, mostly in picking the moments where alternative branches should happen. I recall joking that they decide to not get on the roller coaster and then the movie ends. And there would be a text coda of what happened to everyone later in life, like how American Graffiti or Stand By Me ended. Everyone liked that, and the coin flip in line for the coaster seemed the obvious moment to let the viewer choose. I actually recently came across an old document of my pitches for what happened to every character, and had a good laugh. I think Jim rejected all of them though, they were too jokey/goofy. Combined with all the other behind the scenes features, the real answer is that I simply had no time to make another special feature about just that. Even though you're right, it probably deserved one, as it was a very unique thing at the time. A New Line publicity team did come to set for a couple days and they shot new promotional interviews about the Choose Their Fate feature. It was during the Frankie Cheeks alt death at the fast food drive-thru. I'm sure at the time of DVD release there was some behind the scenes promotional material made from that which went out online. We also did something for San Diego Comic-Con in July 2006 to promote it. Jim, Mary and Ryan did a whole panel about. But that stuff was too late to make it on the actual DVD release. I think it was hard and expensive on a logistics level in the DVD offering. These details I do not know as I was not involved on this front. Probably why it was never attempted again. Perhaps it didn't sell enough? I think New Line had been wanting to do something like this for a while, and this was a movie that felt right. Again, thematically, it is kind of perfect. It's light enough to make it fun. As mentioned earlier, I had already been working on another New Line title, A History of Violence, before Final Destination 3, so I was interacting with the home entertainment team regularly. They knew that I was close with Glenn and Jim, and they came to me very early with their pitch for an interactive version of this movie. I think that was quite key, that we were able to get this idea to the filmmakers quite early, a couple months before production, otherwise something of that scope would not have been possible. I think Jim Wong was quite game to do this because they were given an additional budget, and to him that meant a couple extra shoot days for him to shoot a sequence, plus alternates. He was very involved in writing all of the alt deaths, and I got roped into doing the Frankie Cheeks video diary. That's another long story for another day. I feel like I'm rambling. I don't know if this answered your questions. If you have any others or more specific ones, ask away, and hopefully my memory can be jogged. Suffice to say, I have extremely fond memories working on this project. Literally every idea I ever had at the time, I tried to put into that project. I can tell you I barely slept for over a year working on it, and have never delivered more materials for any project since. She said ask away, so I did. I suppose I have to ask, since everyone's boasting of all the dozens of times they rode the roller coaster, did you ever get a spin on it? I did ride it once, and that was enough for me. I am not so good at rides. I get vertigo. I think in terms of roller coasters, it's actually pretty tame. As you would have seen in Killshot, there was considerable VFX enhancement that added loops and all sorts of things. I do stress the point that the Frankie tape is a crazy extra. Was that a creative collaboration with you, Jim, Glenn, and Sam Easton? Was it as simple as going out and ad-libbing? Frankie is a pretty obnoxious character. I kind of remember him being described as like a few dangerous steps away from Eric Roberts in the movie Star 80 in terms of sleaze, which I felt was a reference that few kids who like Final Destination movies would probably get. She actually sent a small correction. I feel I misspoke about the Eric Roberts character from Star 80, since that guy is a murderer. It wasn't that dark. I think Frankie's real-world reference was Bob Guccione. Around the time I was writing up the proposal for DVD special features, well before the Choose Their Fate interactivity came into play, remember how I said that I was always just looking for an excuse to make short films? I have always been interested in narrative storytelling, so I actually had pitched a short found footage kind of film, like his camera was pulled from the wreckage and the tape was still intact. And then you would have a handful of short unedited shots that would help add extra depth, characterization for the Frankie character, who is kind of a caricature as we see him in the film. We would also then include bits that Sam Easton, who played Frankie, would film on the actual days he's supposed to be filming the girls in line for the coaster, and also on the roller coaster. This was inspired by a small indie drama called Mean Creek, which was about a bunch of kids who try to get revenge on a bully and it goes wrong. There are a couple pieces of video camcorder footage of what this bully does when he's alone, and you sort of see what a sad, lonely dude he is. I remember being impressed at how you could care about a bully from just a handful of shots. That's what I wanted to do. It also seemed like something fairly easy and fun to make if the actor was game. I think everyone liked the idea, but before I ever got round to really writing or plotting it out, I don't remember the details, but it got amalgamated, co-opted into the Choose Their Fate feature. Glenn and Jim definitely had their input at this point, and here's where creatively we were thinking in totally different directions. I wanted to make Frankie this lonely loser and kind of earnest, and I can appreciate that is not what Final Destination is necessarily like, tonally. In retrospect, I think I was going for this pseudo-serious, pretentious idea, whereas Glenn and Jim were going purely for comedy beats for a budding pervert. After it turned into a series of scenes clips of now what happens after he lived, they were receptive to this idea that he might have a change of heart and try to change, but I think in the end, all those scenes were supposed to be played for laughs. I'm not sure how funny any of it really ended up, it's not so much my kind of humour. Most of the scenes we shot, Glenn was around to help direct Sam with a general idea of where he wanted the scene to go, beats-wise, but otherwise it was all improvised and all the locations were things that were available to us at the time. But there were a few actors hired just for that, like the lady in the coffee shop, and aren't there cops who drag Frankie away somewhere? I feel like the idea was always a good one, but how it turned out isn't really what I was going for in the end. I have not watched it in years, maybe since the DVD first came out, probably for this reason. With Dead Teenager Movie, how did that all come about with Ebert? Did you have a clear idea of how the feature would come together? Or did some of the detailed discussion points from him, or others like the folklorist, film professor, Fangoria head, steer what it would become? I had a film dictionary, cliches book that had been written by Ebert. It's a good bathroom book, and one of the definitions in the book was Dead Teenager Movie, and that always made me smile. Then I went back and read his original review for Final Destination, and saw that he had used this term, so I think it all just came from that title definition. I knew that New Line had the nickname The House That Freddy Built, but that those Nightmare on Elm Street movies and Texas Chainsaw Massacre all really revolved around teenagers getting killed and getting to have a bit of fun with the teen movie tropes. That was a big part of it, knowing we would be able to use clips from films that New Line owned. Obviously, if this was a bigger documentary, I would have used many other films of this genre, i.e. Scream, Sleepaway Camp, so many others, but we were limited budget-wise for licensing and such to NL movies only. I had taken a class in university that had feminist readings from the Carol Clover film theory book, Men, Women and Chainsaws, and Mike, who edited Killshot and went to the same film school as me, this is where we met, had very specifically taken a class about horror movies with readings from the same book, and with the professor we interviewed. So this all felt like enough material to try and do a more pop cultural piece. I can't remember exactly how the Fangoria editor came in, but it makes sense to have a magazine that has thrived on films like the FD franchise. It was, again, also an opportunity to get to interview Roger Ebert, which was a real thrill, and that guy couldn't have been nicer. We arrived to film him right after he'd filmed an episode of Ebert and Roper. Didn't have to light or anything, just used his existing set and set up our camera. That actually turned out to have been possibly his last interview before he had surgery. I can see how extremely cool the cast and crew come across in this. I single out Craig Perry as being an exceptionally chill and engaged producer. I do highlight a moment near the end of Kill Shot where the actors are, quite passionately, talking about how uncomfortable the green screen process is. Obviously, not looking for gossip, I think they come across completely fine and it shows how hard this work is. Do you mentally check off things like that during filming, thinking they might not make the cut? Or do other voices have a say in what stays in? It's all promotional, but you do want to show the full experience of filmmaking. Craig is one of the biggest film nerds I've ever had the opportunity and pleasure to work with. We share a passion, collecting of film scores. I've fallen off considerably since FD days, and I will always remember him tracking down something for me that I've wanted since I was like 12 years old. The recordings for the film score of young Sherlock Holmes from the 80s. He's the one constant over all these Final Destination films, including the latest one which just finished production this summer. Yeah, he's a good guy. I keep in touch with him a little bit via social media and share FD links with him when I come across them, especially when everything seems to be a 20th anniversary of something I liked or worked on every other day. I appreciate that you enjoyed that bit of the cast bitching about being on the wires upside down. I actually watched Kill Shot not maybe 8 months or so ago, off YouTube, funny enough, and that moment stuck out to me actually. Maybe because that cast and I had developed a pretty good relationship and they felt fine talking off the cuff like that to me, and that is a trust I don't want to disrespect. Having said that, it was a process that sucked for them. I think it is worth sharing that part of the process. I still think it's kind of funny also how unified they were and how much it sucked. But I suspect these days, studios would never let that into their making of. Anything too negative or controversial is safe to cut. Of course, the bigger name actor in the movie, the more say they have at killing shots. Haha, or lines that might present them in a less than positive light. New Line were pretty great about giving their DVD producers creative leeway, and I would say Fox used to be pretty great for that too, when they still existed. In fact, I think NL even let us feature a special effects gag that went wrong at the drive-thru, because the special effects coordinator went into detail about how they fixed it for the reshoot. Luckily, no one was hurt during that gag. The thing about those two companies' home entertainment departments is that they respect that the DVD Blu-ray is the sort of archival record of a film, and they want to support the filmmakers. Glenn and Jim especially want to show the full experience of filmmaking. That was the whole point of the documentary I did about Glenn's film, Willard. It is in fact my mantra to show just how hard it is to make a movie. It's often great fun, but try getting a hammer to fall on a lever 50 times and see how fun that continues to be. As for myself, your enthusiasm for this project was contagious, as the video is almost 2 hours long. Thanks again for your time with this, and honestly thank you for the special features. I may not quite be there yet, but this peek behind the curtain really did inspire me growing up that filmmaking was a magic experience. Jim, Glenn, and the cast always looked like they were having such a great time, and looking at it as an adult now, it's heartening to know that you were having just as great a time. You're very welcome, and I appreciate the words. I never thought someone would feel that way about supplements, but it heartens me because a lot of earnest hard work and creativity went into it. I was actually out to dinner with MacLeod, who I've mentioned before as editor and my partner in crime on this title, and I mentioned her email. We got to reminiscing, and he has a good memory for a lot of this stuff. He quit his day job in the mailroom for a film distribution company to become a full-time editor for this FD3 project. He reminded me that when that Infinifilm feature of several short BTS moments was scrapped, he thought it was because it would take too much room on the disc, which they needed for the Choose Their Fate stuff. He also reminded me that a lot of the stuff from those ended up cannibalized into bonus content when NL asked us if we could come up with some more BTS stuff for a Walmart exclusive bonus disc, which I doubt many people have. As a super fan of DVD supplements, have you? If not, believe it or not, there are even more special features for Final Destination 3 somewhere out there, including a sort of 4-minute BTS gag reel outtakes montage of a lot of stupid shit done to pass the time. And randomly, set to a song recorded by the on-set stills photographer that was actually called Final Destination Got a Hold on Me. We titled this feature Roller Coasters and Rainbows, but that was rejected by New Line, lol. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's ex-husband, Riley, was on set a bunch. They were not married yet at that time, he himself is a writer-director, and he actually brought up Kill Shot to me some months ago. I think that is what inspired me to rewatch it on YouTube. It feels like a real time capsule of that moment, having lived and breathed that movie for several months. When I was young, it's almost 20 years later, and I can't believe I'm still doing the same kind of job. Anyway, I don't know how I would do listening to a 2-hour breakdown of my work, but you gotta send me a link when you're done. And there you have it. Asked and answered. Final Destination 3, what a thrill ride. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, audience, if you have made it this far. Like Julie, I have never tackled a video project this audacious. I did my best to avoid repeating myself and keeping things relevant, as well as including funny bits. During editing, there were tons of little second thoughts during editing of things I missed out, but even at 2 hours, those extra 5 seconds aren't necessary. Also, I have to leave things out just for y'all to bring up in the comments. On that note, this is a standalone video, it is a passion project for me, but perhaps a sneaky backdoor pilot for me investigating other unassuming movies with impressive special features. I have some ideas, but they don't have to be as expansive as this, and those videos aren't going to be as exhaustive as this. If you grew up with not just a movie, but movie special features that have always stuck in your memory, let me know.
Fucking boring. Hey, if you ever have to come to my funeral, man, bring me a PSP or something.
DVD. Yeah.